Good evening and welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. We're so glad that you could join us tonight. And our scripture will come from Luke 25, verses 30 through 37. Luke 25, verses 30 through 37. Then Jesus answered and said, "A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked, and passed on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was. And when he saw him," I want you to get this, "and when he saw him, he had compassion." He had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine. And he set him upon his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. On the next day when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you." So which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? Jesus asked. And he said, "He who showed mercy on him." Then Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." This Samaritan that we know affectionately as the Good Samaritan, the truth is he was a difference maker. He made a difference in his world. And I believe that we are called to be difference makers. We are called to make a difference in our world. I want to share with you this evening 3 reasons why we are called to be difference makers. 3 reasons why we are called to make a difference in our world. Number 1, we're called to be difference makers through our compassion because there are lonely, hurting people who are in need. There are lonely, hurting people who are in need. They are in need of people with compassion who are willing to make a difference in their lives. Pastor John R. Ramsey wrote this story. He said, "For some time, I've had a person to provide me with a rose boutonniere to pin on the lapel of my suit every Sunday morning. And because I got a flower on Sunday morning, I really didn't think much about it. It was a nice gesture, and I appreciated it, but it became routine." He said, "Until one Sunday morning, what I considered ordinary became very special." He said, "As I was leaving the Sunday service, a young man approached me. He said, 'Sir, what are you going to do with that flower that's pinned on your suit?' At first, I didn't know what he was talking about, but then I understood. And the boy said, 'If you're just going to throw it away, I'd love to have it.' Pastor Ramsey wrote, "At this point, I smiled and gladly told him that he could have my flower, casually asking him what he was going to do with it. The little boy, who was probably less than 10 years old, looked up to me and said, 'Sir, I'm going to give it to my granny. You see, my mother and father got divorced last year. I was living with my mother, but when she married again, she wanted me to go live with my father. So I lived with him for a while, but he said I couldn't stay there either. So he sent me to live with my grandmother. Sir, she is so good to me. She cooks for me and takes care of me. She's been so good to me, and she really loves me. And I'd like to take her this pretty flower to tell her thank you for loving me. Pastor Ramsey wrote, when the little boy finished, I could hardly speak. My eyes filled with tears, and I knew I had been touched in the depths of my soul. I reached up and unpinned my flower, and with the flower in my hand, I looked at the little boy and said, son, this is the nicest thing I've ever heard, but you can't have this flower because it's not enough. He said, if you'll go look in front of the pulpit on the table, there is a nice big bouquet of flowers. You see, each Sunday, a different family will come and bring in flowers. And I want you to go get that big bouquet of flowers, and I want you to give it to your granny because she deserves the very best. He said, and then if I hadn't been touched enough already, the little boy made a last statement that I will cherish forever. He said, what a wonderful day. I asked for one flower and got a beautiful bouquet. You see, there are people in our world who are hurting. There are adults in our world. There are teenagers in our world. There are children in our world who are hurting today. Why should we make a difference? Why should we be difference makers through our compassion? Because our world will never survive if people didn't help one another. That's one of the reasons I love Christian Chapel, is because you always reach out. You're always willing to reach out and help others who are in need. You see, we need each other to survive. Where would this world be without good Samaritans? Where would this world be without those folks who are willing to make a difference through their compassion? What would have happened to the robbed, beaten, and half-dead man if the Good Samaritan had not stopped by to help? I'm afraid without compassionate people, without difference makers, the world would disintegrate into chaos. So yes, we need people who are willing to make a difference through their compassion, because there are lonely, hurting people who need our love and who need our compassion. And then secondly, I believe we need difference makers, people who are willing to make a difference through their compassion, because you see, our own fulfillment in life depends on it. It depends on it. Jesus said, this is my commandment, that you love one another, that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another, that your joy may be full. Jesus never told his audience how the Good Samaritan felt when he left the inn and continued on his journey. But don't you know, he had a fulfilled feeling in his heart. He felt fulfilled because of the love and the compassion that he had expressed, the difference he made in this man's life. I think this statement is so true. When we help others, we help ourselves. There is a deep sense of satisfaction and fulfillment that floods into our lives when we take the time and the energy to do something worthwhile for others, just to lend a hand. In a newspaper, there was a Thanksgiving Day editorial that told of a school teacher who asked her first graders to draw a picture of something that they were thankful for at Thanksgiving. She thought of how little these children from poor neighborhoods that she taught, how little they actually had to be thankful for. She thought that they would draw a turkey to represent some food that would be on their table for Thanksgiving. But the teacher was taken back when little Douglas handed her a picture of a simple, childlessly drawn hand, just a picture of a hand that the child had drawn. But whose hand was it? The class was captivated by the abstract image. One of the children said, "I think it must be the hand of God that brings us food." Another one said, "Maybe it's the hand of a farmer because he grows the turkeys." Finally, when the others were back at work, the teacher bent over Douglas's desk and asked him whose hand it was that he had drawn. And quite shyly, the little boy looked up at his teacher and said, "It's your hand. It's your hand." He had drawn the hand of his teacher. And she then recalled how frequently at recess she would reach down and take shy little Douglas's hand out into where the others were playing. She did that quite often to many of the children, to take them by the hand and take them out to the playground where the other children were playing. And out of all the things at Thanksgiving little Douglas could have been thankful for, he was most thankful for his teacher's hand. Perhaps we can learn that it's not necessarily material possessions that people are in need of. Sometimes just to reach out a hand in love to those around us. There is no better exercise for strengthening our own hearts than reaching down and lifting people up. So yes, Jesus said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another, that your joy may be full." We need difference makers. People need to make a difference in their world through their compassion because of the self-fulfillment it gives to each of us who are willing to reach out. And then thirdly, after Jesus told his story, he asked those who he was talking to, who was really the neighbor here. And one of them spoke up and said, "He who showed mercy on him, he who was willing to make a difference, the one who had compassion, the Good Samaritan, was the one who was really a neighbor, who was really a difference maker." And I don't know if you caught these last words, but here's what Jesus said. Then Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." We should be difference makers because God expects it. That's what God expects of me, and that's what God expects of you. He expects us to have the compassion and the love for others around us. He expects us to make a difference in our world. So why should we be difference makers? Because there are those who are hurting, and there are those who are in need. There is no doubt people who live on your street, people who live in your neighborhood, who are lonely, who are hurting. There are no doubt people probably in our own families who are hurting, who are lonely, who need a heart of compassion, someone to reach out to them, someone to lend them a hand. Maybe a call, maybe a card. Maybe just to go and help. Maybe just someone to talk to. Jesus expects us to be difference makers, number one, because there are people who need us so desperately. And then secondly, we're called to make a difference because of the fulfillment we get from it. There is nothing so fulfilling as helping others, as lending other people a hand. And then God expects it. That's what God expects of us. Why should we be difference makers? Because our world depends on it. Because our fulfillment in life depends on it. And because God expects it. Oh, dear friend, take advantage of the opportunities you are given to make a difference in your world. Take advantage of the opportunities that we are given every day to reach out to those who are lonely and hurting, to reach out to those, to lend a hand, to give an encouraging word. Let's be like Barnabas. Let's be encouragers of one another. And we'll see the fulfillment in our own life and the purpose and the joy in our own lives grow and grow. Because quite simply, this is what God expects of us. This is the expectation that God has of every Christian. I hope and pray that you'll take advantage of your opportunities. God bless you. I hope you have a good rest of this week. And as always, I really hope to see you Sunday. God bless you.